We begin this morning with indications that the National Assembly may have bowed to public pressure on the proposed amendments of the Nigerian Press Council and National Broadcasting Bills. Sponsor of the bill, Olusegun Odebumi, says the bill have been suspended. The proposed amendment have received widespread condemnation. Odebumi says he had initiated the suspension of the bill to allow for consultation with stakeholders in the industry. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, promises to kill any bill that seeks to gag the press or erode its autonomy and independence. His comments at an award ceremony organized by journalists covering the National Assembly are coming amidst the national outcry against the proposed amendment.
I will not be part of any bill that will seek to gag the press. I'll make that abundantly clear. If that is going to be any consolation, no bill will come to the floor of the House that seeks to gag the press. Because the press, as it's supposed to be, is supposed to be the voice of the people. However, and I hold very strongly to the view that there is press freedom and there is freedom of expression.
All right, furthermore, the Senate yesterday rejected the nomination of presidential aide Loretta Onoche as a commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission. The Senate rejected her nomination based on federal character principles. In its report, the screening panel noted that there was already a serving commissioner from Delta State, where Onoche hails from. There have been demonstrations against Onoche's nomination by civil society organizations over concerns that she's a member of the All Progressive Congress. But the presidential aide said she resigned from a membership of the party in 2019. The nomination of another nominee, Sani Ahmed, was stepped down while the nomination of 5 other nominees were confirmed.
Will the Senate approve the nomination of Loretta Onoche as a commissioner representing Delta State in the Independent National Electoral Commission? Those in favor will say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
And still on electoral matters, those who steal ballot boxes on election day risk a 20-year jail term in the new Electoral Offences Commission bill that are now being passed by the Senate. Also establishes a National Electoral Offences Commission. Arise political editor Sumner Sambo reports.
The Senate says the passed Electoral Offences Commission bill is a landmark legislation that will help to strengthen Nigeria's electoral system. It prescribes a 20-year jail term for any citizen that is caught snatching a ballot box or election materials. The bill also recommends at least 5 years imprisonment or a fine of at least 10 million naira or both for any officer or executives of any association or political party that engages in electoral fraud.
It will go a long way in sanitizing the electoral process. It will obviously stop election rigging or minimize election rigging, ballot tapping, killing people because of political power.
A National Electoral Offences Commission has also been established by the new bill to drive the implementation of the new law. It will investigate electoral offences relating to all elections in Nigeria, prosecute electoral offenders, and maintain records of all persons investigated and prosecuted.
I would like for us to also add there who shall not be a member of a political party. No. For this particular one, for the chairman, because he's going to be prosecuting people in all parties. Yes, so he ought not to be. So let's put it in the law.
This is one sure way of keeping offenders responsible and accountable for their actions. We believe that this will sanitize our electoral system and process, and we believe that INEC and indeed the state independent electoral commissions will be able to conduct their elections free of violence.
If this act is signed by the President, then I believe that 2023 election will be free, fair, and credible.
10 years jail term also awaits any person who sells his or her voter's card or is in possession of any voter's card bearing the name of another person, or prepares and prints a document or paper purporting to be a register of voters or a voter's card. Also, at least 15 years imprisonment awaits any judicial officer or tribunal member who corruptly perverts electoral justice during or after an election. The passage of the bill in the House of Representatives is still being awaited before it is sent to President Muhammadu Buhari for assent. Somna Sambu, Arise News.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for that report, Somna Tundu.
I mean, yes, where does one begin? I'm kind of confused. I'll start with the media bill that has been suspended. We need to note the word that was used is suspended, not withdrawn. So this saga might not be over. But it was good to see the Nigerian press act in unison and reject that bill. I thought that was really good and so courageous of the press. And it goes to show the importance of a free press. As for Loretta Onochie, that was also the Senate acting in unison, because you'll recall with the infamous voice votes, when the Senate, President of the Senate called for the voice votes, ayes, there was deafening silence, and nays was thunderous no. But the reason that was adduced is an interesting one. That's based on the principle of federal character, which is in the Constitution. We want to understand what that's about. And that you already have Mrs. May Agbamuche Umbu serving for Delta State. She's married to a man from Delta State. And it's so funny how this clause or this principle that we observe here in politics, where a woman can be appointed to a position based on her state of origin by birth or by marriage, can be a double-edged sword, like so many things are. It worked in Mrs. May Agbamuche Umbu's favor. It did not work for Justice Akon Ikpeme in Cross River State. Remember that saga? And it has not worked out for Loretta Onochie. It's been decided that there's somebody filling her space in her potential space in Delta State. And really, it's a collective size of relief. This is one of those issues where I would say that most people are in agreement that she did not scale that all-important requirement of being non-partisan. And now to the Electoral Amendment Act. I mean, I always talk on this show about the glacial pace of governance. You recall since the Umaru Yar'Adua days, Justice Uwais report, then we had the Sheikh Lemu, then we had Senator Nnamani, all these electoral reform committees. Finally, we appear to be getting somewhere. Because what we had so far in the Electoral Act is really just a slap on the wrist. So now people are really going to have the full weight of the law come down on them for electoral malpractice, or so we hope. Because the law is one thing, the enforcement is quite another.
Okay, quickly. Let's start from where you left it off. The Electoral Offences Commission Bill, which the Senate passed yesterday. Yes, we've been talking about having a special commission for electoral offences since 1999, since the Ways Commission. And the whole objective is to make sure that you strengthen the integrity of the electoral process, and that Nigerians are able to have a dedicated commission to address electoral fraud expeditiously, particularly as cases tend to go on forever. Now, these new proposals that the Senate approved yesterday will look to be stronger than, in terms of provisions, than what is available in the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. If you look at Electoral Act 2010 as amended, yes, there are provisions there, particularly in Part 4 of that Electoral Act. In Part 4 of the Electoral Act, from about Section 118 to Section 131, there are specific provisions with regard to electoral offenses. But those provisions, nobody has been able to enforce them because, one, INEC lacks the capacity. Two, INEC does not have up to 100 legal officers in the entire federation. INEC is overstretched because the law talks about INEC prosecuting electoral offenders. Maybe since the last election, they've been able to take just about 24 cases to court. So the thing is not just about the law. It's about the capacity to enforce the law. As for Loretta Onochie, well, I don't think that the Senate is honest enough. They should just admit that public opinion is very important in a democracy. I think that the success should be attributed to the pressure from the public and not about whether she comes from Delta or not. That question was posed to her during the nomination process, and she said May Agbamuche was not or is not using the Delta State slot, that she's using the slot of another state. Okay, they didn't respond to that, but I guess it looks very convenient for them to save face. It should just have been simple to say, this woman is partisan, both by conduct and by the facts available to us, and on the basis of that, and in line with section 14, subsection 2A in the 3rd schedule of the Constitution, we do not think that this is a fit and proper person. And it happened in the past with General A.B. Maman, with Ambassador Anka, I think that's his name, you know, who were rejected in 2010 on the basis of their association with the People's Democratic Party. As for the media bills, well, I mean, I think it's better suspended, it's better forgotten. Abbreviating the scope of freedom of information or media freedom in Nigeria is unacceptable, and I don't think that the federal government of Nigeria or the government of Nigeria needs that headache or that problem. There will be a better opportunity later on the show to comment, you know, in extenso on this particular issue. So they've taken a wise decision by suspending it. They should not bring it back because it will not be accepted by the Nigerian media or the Nigerian people.
I just want to, I'm sorry, Rufai. May Agbamuche Umbu is from Delta State and her husband is from Cross River State. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about?
No, you got it right.
Yeah, the main issue is about public opinion as an important pillar of the democratic process, in my view.
I think the biggest winners in this last 2 days, most importantly, are the people. So congratulations to the people. The people did win. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotos, Michael Adesua, Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19 and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu, and welcome back, and congrats to the new graduates in the house. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. So we begin with the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, who made an announcement at a webinar organized by the Bureau of Public Enterprise that Nigeria's 15 trillion naira InfraCo, as the infrastructure company, is going to be taking off in the 3rd quarter of this year. So, you know, essentially next quarter. And basically, if you think back to this process that began when we made the announcement on Arise News back in March about this company, it is set to bridge the infrastructure gap, which is estimated to be $30 trillion over the next 10 years, in about $3 trillion over the next 10 years. Seed capital to the tune of $1 trillion already provided by the federal government of Nigeria. The announcement was made again at an investment webinar put together by the Bureau of Public Enterprise, the BPE. Vice President Osibanjo was also there as well. KPMG has been announced as a financial advisor for the infrastructure fund, and it's very much needed with respect to the infrastructure gaps when we think about all the things that need to be achieved in the nation. You know, it's going to kick off. And remember, the main investors here, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the NSIA, Nigeria's Sovereign Investment Authority, and the African Finance Corporation. So 3 major investors spearheading this. Godwin Emefiele said that this has also attracted a lot of investments outside the country. So again, Q3 is when the 15 trillion naira InfraCo kicks off. We move to an interesting survey that was conducted to gauge the attractiveness of the business environment amongst the states in Nigeria, and Gombe topped the list. This was, of course, from the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. This sub-national survey was on a number of categories that they used to rank the states. So 1, infrastructure and security; 2, transparency and access to information; 3, the regulatory environment; and 4, skills and workforce readiness. So Gombe topped the list. Also in the top 3, well, let me quickly run through the top 10. Sokoto was number 2. Jigawa number 3, Bauchi number 4. I couldn't find the 5th state. Not sure why there was no number 5. Well, Kebbi number 6, Anambra number 7, Ondo number 8, Katsina number 9, Bayelsa number 10, and Imo states are just added as the 11th state. So there's still, look, and it was conducted by KPMG between November of 2020 and January of 2021. But still, I mean, when you look at what needs to be done with respect to an enabling business environment, we've talked about this several times. When it comes to the regulatory environment, when it comes to infrastructure, we just mentioned infrastructure in the other news brief with Infraco. So these are the things that are playing in. But I must say, Lagos wasn't in the top 10, interestingly enough, and that did raise a few eyebrows. People were surprised to hear that Gombe State topped that list. Next up, we talk about Flutterwave, leading technology company here in Nigeria. Flutterwave has added, I hope you can hear me, we've been blessed by some lovely rain shower here. The Flutterwave has added a new member to their leadership team, Mr. Olubankole Falade. He's their new Chief Regulatory Government Relations Officer at Flutterwave. And what he's going to be doing, he brings 18 years of experience in law and regulatory affairs to the company. And he's going to be, of course, relating with government with respect to, I guess, the tech environment and what Flutterwave is going to be bringing to the table in terms of payment services and so much more. So he's got previous experience at IHS Towers, at Visa, at a number of other companies. So he brings a lot of experience to the table. Also, I want to look at it. There's a quote here from the CEO of Flutterwave. That is Olubenga Agbola, who is the founder and CEO of Flutterwave. He said, with Bankole joining our team, we believe he is well placed to strengthen our existing relationships as well as support us and create a new relationship with government. He plays an instrumental role in supporting achieve our goals of creating endless possibilities for our customers with our key stakeholders in mind. So, new addition to the Flutterwave team. And then finally, food inflation, or rather, Nigeria's inflation figures will be coming out tomorrow. You should see an image of a large bunch of plantains, about a 2,000 naira bunch of plantains, strapped in a seat belt in the front seat of a vehicle. Basically, that is just talking about the fact that plantains are so expensive now, you don't put them in the trunk of your car, they sit in the front of your car. So we're expecting inflation figures for Nigeria tomorrow. Again, we're at 17.93%. Food inflation is about 22%. And new inflation figures in the US increased yesterday. We got inflation figures from there. Inflation figures in the UK just came out about an hour ago this morning. Inflation is just rising across the globe. So we wait to see what Nigeria's figures will be tomorrow.
And the truth about it is caused by logistical problems, insecurity problems in the north, and it's just been a very, very bad year for farmers because of all the crises we're having in every part of the country. I mean, indicative of that is the farmers in Zabamari that were killed last year when they went to harvest. Their only crime, Rotus, in this country was because they went to harvest a rice farm. And because of that, they were killed. That will trickle down. Food inflation will come as a result of the insecurity. People will not be able to go to their farms. And we should watch it, because there's another report in one of the dailies this morning, Rotus, that's talking about the fact that there's an imminent food scarcity. Are we ready for that? Are we mopping up food? Are we planting more? Are we restoring peace in those areas? Because food inflation drives other forms of inflation, and these numbers are going up. They are not healthy. It is only in Nigeria that the CBN target of 9%, we've done ×2. You know what it means to, when they say you have an inflation target of 9%, it means you're supposed to go less than 9%. You're not even supposed to hit 9%. That's why it's a target. But now we're at ×2 of that target. Something needs to be done as regards all of this.
Well, quickly, Rotus, the ease of doing business. Yes, I see the table that has been provided. And there is talk about, infrastructure and security, regulatory environment, and also very important there is skills. It's good for government to focus on the ease of doing business. But the big problem that I think we face in Nigeria up to now is the infrastructure and security dimension of it. If you have security issues, how many investors will want to go and set up businesses, particularly in those states where there's been an upsurge in the spate of kidnapping and also banditry and all kinds of security challenges. Yeah, a lot has been achieved with regard to the regulatory environment, but I guess you can't take good advantage of that if there is the challenge of security and infrastructure. The other part of it is skills and labor. Let us even imagine that a time comes where you now have these businesses, investors coming to Nigeria. Now, what are we doing with regard to skills development in this country? With the education sector in many parts of the country in crisis. There are states in this country, as we speak, where schools have been shut down because parents are no longer sure that their children will be safe in schools. There are parts of this country where, as a result of rise in crime and distraction and poor governance, not enough persons are going to school. So Nigeria is going to find itself at the back of the queue with regard to competition. And we live, we keep saying, in a very competitive world. So these are things that we need to worry about, thinking ahead and trying to find out how Nigeria will be able to compete, say, in about 10 years. Otherwise, some states will have a crisis. As for plantain, you are talking about plantain. In this Ikoyi, I strayed into one supermarket one day. A finger of banana. I said, oh, banana has potassium. Maybe I should buy. When I saw that banana, it was well packaged, it was well positioned, it was a nice supermarket. I saw a label of 2,000 naira. I had already touched you before I saw the price label. The speed with which I dropped it. I've never been to that supermarket since that day. That is how bad the situation is with the food prices. With a decent, ordinary Nigerian like me cannot even eat banana.
Yes.
Or tomato is also expensive. Try and buy and try to price a mango. That's how bad the situation is. And all of this is linked also to the security challenge that we face. So these are the basic issues that affect ordinary people that government needs to worry about and find solutions to. But I guess, many Nigerians, we're not focusing on the big issues.
I'm interested in that report, Rotus, and I'm also surprised that Lagos didn't crack the top 10, and Lagos was not that mysterious number 5. I don't know how they omitted that. Lagos was number 20 in that list. So what that says to me is that Lagos is quite a hostile terrain to do business in, and yet the entrepreneurs, the SMEs, MSMEs, whoever, are just performing this Herculean task of doing business in Lagos, such that the IGR of Lagos dwarfs everybody else. So Lagos comes number 1 consistently for IGR. How much better would it be if it was actually easier to do business in Lagos? That's the question I have to ask. There's Lagos, then there's Rivers, Abuja, Delta. Those are usually the ones who top IGR. And a state like Jigawa that cracks the top 10, it was top 3, is number 3 of this ease of doing business report, recorded one of the steepest declines in IGR in Nigeria in 2021. Their IGR declined by over 30%, and yet they're one of the states that it's easiest in which to do business. It's curious, isn't it?
Very good analysis there, Tundu. Great point.
Oh, well. Thank you so much for your time, Rotus, and for your message. Now moving on to more business updates, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Well, it's all about inflation figures this morning. You've been talking about it as far as Nigeria is concerned. I'm going to take you to the US and, of course, the UK have just had inflation figures. And it's big questions, really, for central bank governors now. Is it transitory or is it, as they term it, sticky? That's the question. Asia Pacific stocks mostly fell then after those hotter than expected US inflation figures. China down almost 1%. Hong Kong down about 0.5%. Nikkei about 0.25%. And other developments, though, Singapore's economy, look at this, grew 14.3% year on year in the second quarter. Not as high as expected, not a particularly huge figure, but I think everybody in other countries would actually quite like growth like that, provided it were controllable. Right, so the United States then is clamping down on its own businesses. It's warning businesses which are connected to China's Xinjiang region. They run, as they put it, a high risk of violating a law. It's updated advisory. I'll give you the wording of it. It's quite interesting. Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security, Labour and Office of the US Trade Representative states that, and this is correct, businesses and individuals that do not exit supply chains, ventures and or investments connected to Xinjiang could run a high risk of violating US law. It's quite serious, that, isn't it? Wall Street, then, just a quick recap. So given the inflation figures, unsurprising that the markets actually dipped quite considerably. It came in at 5.4% inflation compared with a year earlier, largest monthly gain since August 2008. Their expectation was for a 5% increase, so that was slightly higher. Is it significant? Well, it was down to used car sales and the rest of it, and a bit of food as well. So is it transitory? That's what the markets are actually thinking, but nevertheless, it did actually hit them quite enormously. Stock futures flat today as far as the United States markets are concerned. However, the chairman of the Fed, Jay Powell, will be before Congress for 2 days, and he'll be talking about inflation. He'll be talking about what he thinks about these figures and where he feels the economy in the United States is going. Now, remember, if you would please, August and September are going to be very significant because we've got the Jackson Hole Symposium in August, and then I think it's going to be a key meeting, the FOMC meeting in September, which should show some key inflection points for what's going to happen to the economy and what's going to happen to the finance markets in 2021 into 2022. So that's coming up, even though a lot of people will be away on their holidays right now. When they come back, there'll be some pretty big questions to answer. US reporting season has started. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. JP Morgan blowing, and Goldman's basically blowing everybody away. You remember yesterday I had Jamie Dimon, talking about lowering expectations for what JP Morgan was going to do. A difficult environment for lending and so on. Not true. Doing extremely well. Trading revenue fell 30%. But they've made a lot of money out of IPOs. Goldman's too, propelled by strong performances in the investment market and a robust IPO market. Will that last, though? That's the question to ask, isn't it? Will we be looking at these figures maybe next year? Keeping an eye on inflation, just as far as the EU's concerned, no overheating signs there. Germany and France, nothing at all, basically. It's not been actually unsurprising that we haven't had big inflation from Germany and France, and thus the euro got a bit bashed overnight. So to UK, and inflation's built up here as well, 2.5% now in the year to June, expected to be just above 2%, but it's 2.5%. Now, what is that about? Bank of England target of that, forecasts of 2.2%. It's about food imports. It's about labour, because because of Brexit, we don't have access to a cheap-ish immigrants, and I mean that in a nice way. We're very, very grateful that these people actually come to the country to help farming work, and so that's not happening. So that's why we've seen higher air costs as well, but basically it's about food prices. Will the Bank of England hold its nerve? Who knows? UK firms don't be rushing back to the offices on Monday. It's the sort of big unlocking, July the 19th. A lot of them are saying, no, thanks very much indeed. They're much more concerned about the safety of their employees. They're not convinced that an office is necessarily a safe place from the pandemic. Deloitte, for example, which is a massive management company, big accounting firm, said it will increase the number, for example, of staff coming back to work to 50%. Next week. So it's only half people actually coming back to work. And finally, commodities. Oil, rallies, but remains range-bound for all the reasons that we know. We've been talking about still this impasse with OPEC+. IEA is joining in the debate now, warning that lack of agreement is going to threaten not only developing countries, we were talking about that yesterday, but also the whole global recovery. And gold actually, ticking up, could be finding a sort of bit of mojo perhaps from these inflation figures now, because when inflation rises, it reduces the value of assets and all the rest of it, even though prices rise, and therefore people turn to gold. So we'll see. That is your global view, ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning to you.
All right, Michael, isn't it time for the central bank and the Fed in America to come out and admit their mistake, that they were wrong about inflation? Because look at what is happening now. The Bank of England, for instance, has said, we're going to remove the blockade they put on dividends and bonds and the likes and share buybacks and all of that because the economy has started to reflate. People are going out more and the likes. You talked about Goldman Sachs making money. You talked about JP Morgan making money. David Solomon was on CNBC yesterday, was talking about the fact that the economy had reflated pretty much. It's now bullish looking. Inflation is rising. Isn't it time for the central bank to come clear and know that this is a sticky inflation, not transitory inflation?
Could be. We'll listen to what Jay Powell says this evening, won't we? I mean, you may be absolutely right. Who knows? We just don't know, do we? We don't know whether it's sticky or it's transitory. That's the thing. Just do not know. There are arguments for both sides of that, aren't there? And you're absolutely right. Now, remember that JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, I'm sure I don't have to remind you, but these are not what's happening now. These are results from what's been happening over the past year. Unsurprising, but they've made a lot of money because that's what banks do. Borrowing has not been as difficult as people actually thought it was, not as difficult as Jamie Dimon was saying yesterday. And also IPOs were doing quite well. Now, I suspect those are beginning to dry up because we've had all the influences from China. We've had all the influences from the regulatory authorities in the United States looking at SPACs and thinking, are they such a good idea? So is this the end of the boom? Maybe you're right. I would be very, very cautious, though. I would personally, I'm not a central bank manager, I would wait and see. I'd wait and see how the year actually pans out before I'd be making any big decisions about interest rates, because the last thing that central banks want to do is crimp the global recovery, and that's always the danger with rising interest rates. So you're absolutely right to point to those warnings and those worries. This is how central bankers earn their money, isn't it?
Well, two quick things. The first one is COVID, Delta variant, which is causing havoc in about 100 countries of the world. 89 countries reporting sequences. And then all of this against the background of our earlier position about how economic recovery is likely to happen this year globally. How much havoc do you think that the Delta variant is likely to cause with regard to economic normalization? Particularly now that India is reporting a Delta plus variant, which is even worse than the Delta variant. And in Peru, another variant has also emerged, what is called the Lambda variant. So with regard to market economics, what should be our worst fears? And secondly, David Solomon, the Goldman Sachs boss, was saying yesterday that, we're likely to witness a delay in terms of the number of Chinese companies that will be able to list on the U.S. stock exchange, New York Stock Exchange, because of the clampdown by the Chinese CAC. Beyond gaining access to global capital, what is this special fascination about listing in the United States by Chinese companies?
He's saying that because, obviously, and as I said, Goldman Sachs results were quite high on their IPO activity. They're seeing that shrinking quite now. What's happening is that China is clamping down on people being able to IPO abroad from China, and vice versa. Now Biden is saying that companies who do business within that particular province, may well be breaking the law. So I would think that's pretty au courant, isn't it? It's what's happening right now. We'll see how it resolves. I don't know. As far as the variants are concerned, again, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I would suppose that what you do is try to reflect against the progress of vaccines versus that. Although the danger is that some of these variants now are hitting people who have been even double vaccinated. It's very, very uncertain. I think what we're going to have, as we normally do, I hate to say this, I do feel as though that some of the developing countries are going to be hit harder than developed economies simply because people have not been vaccinated. So now's the time to step that up. We need the World Health Organization to tell us what's going on, I think, really.
I have a question about Carlos Ghosn. I mean, apart from the sensational, escape in the music box, in which apparently there was no room for Greg Kelly because he's left languishing, looking at 15 years in jail. I want your take on the corporate governance issues that his case has thrown up. The Nissan CEO, that Makoto Uchida, claims that Carlos Ghosn stayed too long, was too powerful, nobody could tell him anything, they were scared of him. And that created the climate where those financial misconduct accusations arose. What is your take on that whole situation?
My take on it is this, that if you're courageous enough to tell bosses who are surrounded by sycophants that they're actually wrong, in other words, if there's a bit of an emperor's new clothes about them, then that's what ought to happen. Does it happen in companies like Nissan? Clearly it didn't. And clearly that's something to do with the corporate climate that exists in Japanese companies. I've never found it particularly healthy. I know that they would reflect great growth against that kind of thing, but they are male dominated and they are shut your mouth dominated as well. And I don't think that's a good thing. I'm all for free expression. I would have thought that a big, strong band of non-executive directors is what Nissan actually needed then, and I suspect what it needs in the future. It's courageous people from outside who don't necessarily have a stake in a company to be able to say you shouldn't be doing this. That would be my answer to these kind of things. Again, I'm no corporate lawyer. I don't know what happened at Nissan. You're quite right. It was a stunt, wasn't it? Nice for cameras, great for headlines and all the rest of it. Does it actually show a change in the way that Japanese corporate governance is actually going to go forward? I simply don't know. I would suggest, though, that it needs to.
All right, and thank you so much, Carlos Ghosn, for disrupting the Zaibatsu mentality of the Japanese, because they really needed it. Thank you so much, Carlos. All right, we'll take an update on COVID-19 pandemic. This is what joins us here this morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Bati. Good morning, Tunu, and welcome back from mommy duties. It's great to see you again.
Thanks, girl.
Well, let's start off from where Dr. Abati stopped it with that conversation with Michael Wilson. You're correct. The highly contagious Delta variant of the COVID-19, now detected in over 104 countries, is being blamed for the rise in infections and deaths globally. We are seeing lockdowns are returning in some parts of the world. Over 187 million people have now been sickened by the virus, at least 4 million fatalities, and over 3.4 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines administered globally. Vast majority of those sickened by this virus have recovered, though some have continued to experience symptoms weeks and months after. And scientists are beginning to warn that long COVID is becoming one of the hidden toes of this pandemic. Well, here in Nigeria, 9 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, were responsible for 154 new infections and 1 COVID-related death in the last 24 hours. However, Lagos alone posted 119 of those new infections. We have an update on vaccination across Nigeria. The agency in charge of COVID-19, the NPHCDA, says the country will get a total of 41,282,710 doses of COVID-19 vaccines by the end of September this year. Dr. Faisal Shuaibu, who is the boss of the agency, made this known during that briefing. He gave a breakdown of the figures and when they are expected, as well as the brand of the vaccines. Now, by the end of July or August, there's another slide there from my producer. By the end of July or August, Dr. Shuaibu says Nigeria is expected to receive over 3.9 million doses of Oxford AstraZeneca from the COVAX facility. Now, in the same month of August, another 3.9 million doses of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines donated by the U.S. government will be received through COVAX. He then said in Q3 of the year, the COVAX facility is expected to deliver over 3.5 million doses of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines. Finally, a consignment of 29,850,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine will arrive in batches by the end of September from the African Union Commission. The agency boss says all required logistics for storage and distribution for a different range of these vaccines are being put in place. Now, he also stated that the country has officially ended the first phase of its strategic COVID-19 vaccination plan and is now preparing to commence the second phase, and anyone 18 years and above qualified to take it. And of course, this will happen when these expected doses arrive the country. Here's a breakdown on your screen for the first phase exercise of the vaccination here in Nigeria. You recall that the country received 4,024,000 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in March this year. 3.9 million people have taken a shot in total. A breakdown shows that, of course, 1 million people have taken their first single dose, and about 2.8 million double doses have been utilized in the country. Now, he also said that the country recorded 14,550 cases of mild to moderate adverse event following immunization, while only 148 cases were considered to be severe out of the adverse event following immunization recorded in the country. So this is a breakdown of what Nigeria has been doing and hopes to do in the next 3 months when it gets more vaccines. Elsewhere, the Department of Health in South Africa says the national vaccination program continues across most provinces. However, it was temporarily closing down vaccination sites in some districts in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng due to the recent violent protests in the country. Meanwhile, a catastrophic fire that ripped through a COVID-19 isolation in a hospital in an Iraqi city has killed at least 92 people and injured more than 100 others. Officials say a faulty wiring at the Al Hussein Teaching Hospital sparked explosion in an oxygen tank. You will recall that this is the second of such disaster within the last 3 months in Iraq. In April, I brought you a story that a fire killed 82 people in a COVID-19 intensive care unit in Baghdad. In France this morning, guys, interesting news coming out. Health authorities recorded a surge, not in infections, not in deaths, but in those who would like to be vaccinated. And this comes right after President Macron announced a slew of restrictions for the unvaccinated in the country. President Macron gave a national address where he said, starting August, to enter restaurants, shopping malls, go to festivals, or even the cinemas, or to even get on a train or a plane in France, you will need to either prove that you are vaccinated or that you have tested negative. The government registration site in France says it recorded 20,000 appointments every minute, immediately after the president's address.
Well, to start with France, President Macron's major message to the French people, he asked them to look at what is happening in the world. And indeed, if you look at what is happening in the world, from South Korea to Taiwan to Vietnam to Afghanistan to Indonesia, and even here in Africa, in about 16 countries in Africa, yes, there is need for people to panic. And after that message from President Macron, about 1 million people trooped out immediately, this week alone, to go and get vaccinated. So again, this is a case of leadership, a leader standing in front and trying to mobilize the people. And in France, one of the measures they have adopted is that now you even need COVID passes for you to be able to get into a restaurant, or to even access a shopping mall. And that's one of the things that the government of France wants to introduce. So if you can't get into a shopping mall or you can't get into a restaurant, you might as well take the jobs. But with this Delta variant, the Delta Plus variant, the Peruvian Lambda variant that has also been reported, it looks like the world is going to be, in a more difficult place, unfortunately, as we move along. Now, secondly, you talked about Faisal Shaibu, the head of the Primary Healthcare Development Agency in Nigeria. Well, one other major point that he made is about, look, the Delta variant having arrived in Nigeria and the need for every Nigerian to observe non-pharmaceutical measures. Wear your mask, wash your hands, pay attention to personal hygiene, because indeed, in Lagos here, before Dr. Shaibu gave this weekly report, you will recall that the incident manager, the incident commander in Lagos, that is the governor, said that, look, the situation in Lagos is getting really serious. I understand that the Bagada Isolation Center, is now filled up. I even had a story of somebody who had taken 2 jabs And she's for the past 6 days now, she's been on oxygen. So all of us, every one of us, we just need to be very careful. As for South Africa, well, this is politics standing in the way of every effort to check the COVID-19 pandemic in that country. People in the last 4 days in South Africa, they were even looting pharmaceutical stores. I don't know how anybody will go and steal drugs that have not been prescribed. That is how bad the situation is, and the authorities in that country have had to, close down vaccination centers in order to protect workers and also to protect the materials available to them. But it's unfortunate, but what South Africa has done is to reschedule the vaccination dates, those who have been given appointments. It's a major setback for South Africa, but at the heart of it, it's not just the rule of law, it's also the politics of it, Zuma's politics, who is seen in KwaZulu-Natal and by his kinsmen as a defender of the interest of the poor. It's unfortunate that the basic issues about corruption, about his contempt of court, are not being focused upon by the people who are just rioting for strictly ethnic, nationalist, and emotional reasons.
Well, hospitals were also looted here in the aftermath of the EndSARS protests. I think when you just have a marauding bunch of rioters, they completely stop engaging common sense or logic. I'm just so disgusted and truly saddened by that fire in Iran, the second one in the space of just a few months, less than 3 months. And the details are horrific, Adesua. You've read all of that. How people cannot even identify the remains of their relatives because they're charred beyond recognition. They're down to body parts and skulls. It's just so heartbreaking, this complete lack of proper management. Arrests have been made this time, 13 arrests, but do you think that's actually going to help prevent yet another one of these disasters?
Tundu, I wish I knew the answer to that, but most likely not. When you look at, even the government itself has said it cannot rule out corruption from what is happening in these fire incidents because sharp practices, people are cutting corners, they do not have enough equipment, too many people to handle in those isolation centers. They should not be there. They should not have so many people cramped up. However, there are limited resources to take care of the spiraling numbers of infections in the country. So there's a lot going on, and this would probably, unfortunately, not be the last of the fire incident in Iraq if we're not careful.
Very sad ordeal, very, very sad ordeal. I mean, all of this conversation goes back to that narrative of leadership, really. When you look at it, leadership matters a great deal. China built, I mean, not to toot China's horn now, China built a 10,000-bed hospital in the space of how many days? 6 days? We didn't hear of fire incidents out of China. Leadership,
Iran probably needs help. They say the authorities say they don't have money. In the 2 hospitals, the first one in April and the second one, they didn't even have water sprinklers, fire sprinklers, in the hospitals. So yes, leadership, but perhaps Iran needs help.
All right.
So the US should lift sanctions. Is that what you're advocating?
Lift sanctions on Ayatollah Khamenei and co?
Yeah.
Okay.